The topic is the future of Palestine, and I do hope that our speakers will be able to give us a more optimistic outlook than I and many of you could afford to do. I'm delighted to welcome here onto the stage Hanan Ashrawi, who is, of course, a member of the Executive Committee of the Palestine Liberation Organization. And joining her on stage, Saeb, the Secretary General of the Executive Committee of the PLO. Moderating this session will be Al Jazeera's Mehdi Hasan. Hey.
Everyone got a microphone? Hello, good afternoon. Everyone awake?
Hello.
Yes? Good. Introductions are all done, so we can kick off with solving this problem in the next 20 minutes. I have to say, Saeb Erakat insisted he only be interviewed by a spokesperson for the Palestinian Authority, but they couldn't find one, so I'm here instead. That's a joke. Let's kick off. Let's get straight into it. The topic is the future of Palestine. Before we get to the future, let's talk about the present. I think you'd both agree that for decades, the situation in Palestine has been dire. But given you both have been involved in this conflict, in these negotiations for decades, how bad is it right now in relative terms, given the Trump administration effectively declaring war on the Palestinians, backing every Israeli illegal move, given the craziness of Israeli politics, a third election in the space of a year? How bad is it now, comparatively speaking, Hanan?
I think
you want to grab the mic?
Sorry. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. We will try to wake everybody up. I know there's a lot of food here, but let's try to work on some food for thought as well. Very provocative. I think we're witnessing the completion of the fundamentalist Zionist agenda that began its implementation in 1948. And I think it is that bad, in the sense that there is an attempt to finalize the Palestinian question by delivering Palestine to Israel. Before, we used to say that Israel has its own agenda, it is imposing its will, it is acting with full impunity, it is trying to superimpose Greater Israel over all of historical Palestine. And we used to say that the US is a biased peace broker and has always given Israel cover and so on, but it was, in a sense, contained within certain basic assumptions based on international law. Now you have the most extreme hardline Israeli government coalition. You have in the US not only the sponsor and not only the ally of Israel, but you have in them a partner in the occupation. We call it a partner in crime, in the sense that the US is involved directly in taking illegal unilateral steps to totally destroy the imperatives of peace and the building blocks of.
So is it worse now than it has been before in your career doing that?
I think so. I think it is at one point where we are facing existential issues. Okay. And these issues are not just local, they're not just internal, they are global, because we are part of a rules-based system that is being challenged.
Okay. Is it worse now than before, Sam?
No. I believe that's what's worse is that the international system is changing. We have President Trump, who constitutes a change in international relations. 6,000 years of recorded history of man and woman is now being translated that nations either are born to be strong or to find strong nations to protect them with the right price. That's the Trump's doctrine. And he decided to begin with us as Palestinians by undermining all the terms of reference, international law, Jerusalem is Israel's capital, closing offices, consulates, trying to legitimize settlements, and so on. But this is to no avail, for a simple reason. We're 194 nations worldwide. Not a single nation of you is without problems with its social fabric, demographic, or borders. So the Spanish don't wake up one morning to find Barcelona the capital of Catalonia if the price is right to Trump. Neither would Peru or Ecuador. Show me a nation without problems. So if this administration is going to throw us in the bath of the law of the jungle, God help us. So as Palestinians, we managed to stand firm and tall with international law, recognition of Israel, two-state solution, going the path to achieve peace, and peace is doable, and peace is possible, and we will make it. Because as a Palestinian, I'm not going to get into the discussion, what's my situation, bad or worse. I was 12 years old when the occupation came to my hometown, Jericho. I'm 64 now, 8 grandchildren. I want to make sure that I have my own state. So what is it that will enable me to build my own state and continue this process?
So let me ask you about that. You mentioned two-state solution. The Trump administration, Hanan mentioned, there were some basic assumptions that previous administrations, for all their biases, stuck to. This is an administration that says has no interest in the two-state solution, doesn't use the phrase two-state solution. Jared Kushner says there's no need to talk about two-state solution. The Israeli government, not interested in a two-state solution, doesn't use the phrase anymore. You said 10 years ago, in 2009, you told a bunch of reporters, you said that the time may be right, you said, for President Abbas to, quote, tell his people the truth, that with the continuation of settlement activities, the two-state solution is no longer an option. And yet 10 years later, you're still clinging to a two-state solution. Why are you continuing to perpetuate this fiction of a two-state solution?
Mehdi, I think my line was, with the settlement activities continuing, it's undermining the two-state solution. But the only
you said the two-state solution is no longer an option. It may be time to say it's no longer. That was 10 years ago.
If they continue with settlement activities,
they did continue.
Mehdi, no longer an option to those who make settlements and those who make dictations. But for me, the only option is to live and let live. The only option is international law, the rule of law, solving problems by peaceful means. Look, you have a Trump administration. Once there is a president of the United States called Theodore Roosevelt that said the White House is an office of international morality. And that's right. This White House needs giant statesmen and not real estate agents. And once you're shameless, you can do whatever you want.
But for you, it's still two states or bust.
It is two-state solution. And the question to me today is not whether it's two-state or one state. The question to me, how do I continue institution building? How do I continue legitimization? How do I continue staying in my land? And yes, the answer will be two-state solution. I have never been closer to a Palestinian state more than I am now.
Okay. Well, let me ask Hanan a similar question, not just about two-state solution, but Trump came into office promising he'd deliver the deal of the century. He recently said, and I quote, if Jared Kushner can't do it, it can't be done. Do you have any faith whatsoever in Jared Kushner bringing about a two-state solution or a solution of any shape or form?
Let me put it frankly. I don't think that's the first and only delusional statement that we heard from Trump. Let alone nepotism, of course, in the White House. His son-in-law, of course, who has his own commitments, his own ideological commitments. That's what they brought to bear on the so-called peace process. There is no theoretical plan. There's an ideological commitment. There is an unholy alliance between the extremist right-wing Christian Zionists, the evangelicals, between the extremist fundamentalist Jewish Zionists, between Netanyahu, between Trump's funders, including Sheldon Adelson and so on, the pro-Israel lobby. This is the combination that is taking decisions on behalf of the US administration. So the question is that what we're seeing now is an actual implementation. I talked about unilateral illegal measures. Saeb talked about the annexation of Jerusalem, the recognition of the annexation of Jerusalem, the borders, the refugees. They dropped the term occupation from their lexicon. They dropped self-determination.
So based on all of that, do you still stick to a two-state solution as well? Do you still think that's possible?
I think we have to, look, the Palestine National Council and Central Council took decisions that the interim phase is over, took decisions that we are now free of our obligations as per the signed agreements, because everything has been violated and Israel reneged on all its obligations, and it is acting along with its partner, the US, to destroy the two-state solution. So there are certain requirements. Let me go to the evolution of the two-state solution. When in 68, 69, we talked about the one-state solution, you all know about the democratic, non-sectarian, secular state in Palestine where Jew, Christian, Muslim, atheist, anybody can live in peace. This was shut down immediately. Then when we accepted, in 1988, the National Council accepted the two-state solution, the principle of partition. They said, no, based on 181, they said, no, that's not enough. That's a major concession. We accepted it. Then they said, no, 242, 338, not 181. because Israel had already annexed 22%. So now Israel created more facts, and they said, no, you have to accept 242,338. Now that Israel has created more facts on the ground...
So my question is, at what stage do you go back to the one state, democratic state, non-sectarian? Because 1 in 3 Palestinians say they support that. Among young Palestinians, a growing number support that. In the diaspora, I hardly meet any Palestinian in the diaspora anymore who support the
I agree with you. There are many people who think that the two-state solution is a thing of the past.
Where do you stand?
And that reality has superseded the two-state solution. I think we should seriously discuss, negotiate, look into all the options, including not just the one state, including the issue of how the shape and the nature of the Palestinian system within all of historical Palestine. If we're going to say that the idea of partition is off, not because we chose to cancel it, but because Israel and the US have effectively canceled it.
Yeah.
So what are our options? Now, we're not going to say that we can influence the whole world. No. There is a universal consensus about two states, but Palestinians are beginning to rethink that since they know that this has cost us tremendously. This has allowed for expansion of settlements, more land theft, more theft of resources, more home demolitions, more lives. Thousands of Palestinians have been killed because of two things. Because of lack of accountability for Israel and full impunity for Israel on the one hand, lack of protection for the Palestinians, and total disregard for Palestinian rights and lives. These are the issues that we must address. Without them, there is no solution whatsoever.
So Saeb, Hanan says, maybe it's time for a rethink. We need to put all options on the table. You're saying to me you've never been closer to two states, which some people will agree with, many people would disagree with. Would you, if you look at the Palestinian people and you look at the polling, you look at the debates going on, and you say, actually, you know what, this is where we are. The Americans and the Israelis have canceled what I've worked my lifetime for, and actually the only realistic option now is to say, this is apartheid, we demand equal rights, one person, one vote. Is that something that's completely anathema to you, or is that something you would consider?
Look, government and leadership is not about what I should tell people. First of all, you have an American administration that's working on the deal of the last century, not the deal of the century. They're trying to take us back to Balfour Declaration that specified the creation of a Jewish homeland and without prejudicing the civil and religious rights of Palestinians. So it is the deal of the last century, or maybe it could be the deal of the next century, as far as Kushner's genius is concerned. Now, this administration, all American administrations were pro-Israel. This administration moved us to being pro-occupation, pro-settlements, and so on. So if Saeb Erakat stands and tells Mehdi, rape is legal, stealing is legal, that's equivalent when somebody stands up and says settlements are legal, against the Hague Convention, Geneva Conventions, all international law. So the point here, what serves me as a Palestinian? How do I get to my rights? How do I get to my freedom?
Which is what I'm asking.
How do I get to my independence?
If the two-state way doesn't work, is there an alternative?
I will get there through sustaining myself on the ground, through continuing building my institutions, strategy that will sustain my legitimacy. And look, when I say
Saeb, there's a famous statement, there's a famous quote attributed to Einstein.
I'm going to stop you.
There's a famous quote attributed to Einstein, that madness is doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. Isn't that what you're doing?
I'm not mad. I'm not experiencing the same thing. They are the mad ones.
Okay.
Since 1967, Israel has been trying military solutions, home demolitions, extrajudicial killing, settlements, and so on. What did this give them? Now, my point here, 6th of December, 2019, we watched history in the making. The American Congress, not the Europeans, not the Africans, not the Russians, not the Chinese, not the Arab League. The American Congress voted 226 votes against 188 for two states, Palestinians' rights of determination, no settlements, and no annexation. This is significant. This is significant. This is a wake-up call to Trump. And when I say that we have never been so close, last 2 days ago, we had a resolution from the General Assembly to renew the mandate of UNRWA, United Nations Relief and Work Agency. We got 170 votes. Israel, the US, and the Pacific Islands. All our resolutions that we passed, 160 votes. All people now, the responsibility of the international community is to ask themselves the question. You want to take the cost-free road? You're going to count in this administration the one I abandoned international law and seek what you like to satisfy people? My solution is to live and let live. I have recognized the state of Israel right to exist and live in peace and security, 6-7 lines, and the only solution for me is the establishment of a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital on the 1967 lines and solving all core issues in accordance with international law.
So in accordance with international law, Saeb points to the UN resolutions and the congressional votes go in your favor. Of course, these votes they don't always affect facts on the ground. So a lot of people, especially in the diaspora, as you know, in the US where I'm based right now, a lot of talk of BDS. This is the only way is to put teeth behind these threats and these resolutions, exact a cost for the occupation, boycott, divestment, sanctions. Some other people say that's anti-Semitic. You're targeting the world's only Jewish state. What is your position on BDS, Hanan?
Well, first of all, before we get to BDS, we have hundreds of UN resolutions, and they are all gathering dust in the archives of the UN. I just had a meeting with Ban Ki-moon, who also shares our frustration in the sense that when it comes to Palestine, all resolutions are to be read, declared, announced. Not a single one was implemented or honored. So that's enough. When Congress takes decisions that are totally adverse to Palestinian rights and totally, fully supportive of Israel, they are applicable.
Yeah.
But when they take resolutions about the two-state solution, this is non-binding.
Okay.
But what is binding is that there is an ironclad commitment to funding for Israel. That's the problem with this resolution. So to go back to BDS, I think the issue of accountability is crucial. From the beginning, Israel was exempt from any kind of accountability, any kind of sanctions, any kind of real examination of its lawlessness and criminality. If they continue like that, and if governments are governed by their own self-interest and suffer from a lack of a very strong backbone, then I think the people have the right to take matters, to act on issues of principle. I think the people should be given the right to be ethical consumers, to be responsible investors, and to respect international law where governments are not doing it. So if you deprive not just the Palestinians, but individuals and organizations and firms and companies from acting on the basis of principle and law, then what you're doing is telling the Palestinians you have no right to address international organizations, to appeal to international law.
So you
have no right to armed struggle. You have no right to collective resistance. And the whole world has no right, individually and collectively, to hold Israel accountable.
So you're a supporter, it's fair to say.
Sanctions. I'm explaining the context, because
I'm
things out of context are really misleading. So I believe this kind of accountability for Israel is perfectly legitimate. It worked for South Africa. And it is one of the many tools of nonviolent resistance that can be effective and can empower people to act where the governments are too cowardly to act. This is one.
So, I just want to, I'm sorry, running out of time. Saeb, the PLO, you're the Secretary General of the PLO. You used to work for the PA and President Abbas. What is the position of the PLO and the Palestinian Authority on boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning Israel?
We are with any move that will...
Raise the microphone.
First of all, we are totally with the BDS as far as all settlement activities are concerned, all settlement products. This is immoral, this is sweat and blood of Palestinians, and we're not against any peaceful move to stop this occupation.
But you support it only against settlements, just to be clear.
Settlements, and we support any other action that may bring about a two-state solution, because the real threat in Israel is the Israel occupation of Palestinians.
Okay.
That's the truth. Settlements is a threat.
Yes.
Is a real threat. Occupation is a threat.
But you would boycott settlement goods, but not goods from Israel.
You asked me about the PLO position. The PLO position is to boycott all settlement products and urge all nations to boycott all settlement. But at the same time, the PLO is not against any peaceful means that may achieve the end of occupation and holding Israel accountable.
What were you saying, Hanan?
I was saying that the PNC, Saeb, no, the PNC and the PCC adopted BDS. They didn't say only settlement products. This is a Central Council.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
We support BDS fully, and there's a committee that supports BDS.
We are with any move and any steps that may hold Israel accountable. Now, anti-Semitism is evil, Mehdi. Anti-occupation is noble. And those who are trying to mix between the two aspects are evil. And this must be the point that we make here.
Yep.
If we want to stand tall for international law, we have to realize, when I say that we're closer to a Palestinian state more than any time before, today, in 15th of December 2019, I, the Christian and Muslim Palestinian, am 50.9% of the population between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean. Netanyahu and Friedman are 49.1% of the population. What are they going to do with me? They want to impose a solution, dictate a solution, whatever it is. It's not going to work. It's not doable. Occupation only corrupts. And if Trump wants to defeat terrorism in this region, We're with him. Just to finish a sentence, please. I think he did not develop the techniques to kill ideas with bullets. And he did not develop the techniques to prevent ideas to travel with or without visas. To defeat terrorism and extremism in this region, two things are needed. And I want the Arabs to hear me, because the real threat on us as Arabs are Arabs. Democracy in the Arab world is a must. And anyone who says Arabs are not ready for democracy is a racist, period. Secondly, what we need is to see the drying up of the Israeli occupation. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to redouble from the start. The solution will be two states, the state of Palestine with Jerusalem's capital, to live side by side, the state of Israel, peace and security.
We're running out of time. I need to get a quick answer from you. You mentioned the conditions, the populations. Very quickly, do you believe you're living under apartheid right now?
Absolutely. I am living under apartheid, full apartheid, deeper apartheid, worse apartheid than the ones that existed in South Africa, because there are roads in the West Bank and East Jerusalem today I cannot use as a Palestinian, only Israelis can use. Such diseases as bigotry and racism, once they inflict underneath our skins, we had as a human tendency to justify it, sometimes sociological, psychological, economic, sexual, and now Israel is using the term security reasons. Yes, it is apartheid.
We're almost out of time. I must ask this question to both of you. With the greatest respect, the vast majority of Palestinians are young people. They're under the age of 29. Does the Palestinian leadership reflect them? No. Does it represent them? Saeb, I believe you're 64. Hanan, you're 73. Mahmoud Abbas is 84 and almost 11 years into a term that finished 11 years ago. Is there a leadership crisis in the Palestinian movement right now?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, longevity in itself is not a virtue. It depends on what you do with it. And it depends on whether you take over a monopoly. If you take a monopoly of decision-making and leadership positions, then certainly you are excluding the younger generation. And I've been calling for the empowerment of the young and women. And I've been trying actually to get out of the scene to make room for the young. But I think this can happen and should happen through elections. Can I say something?
Time is very short, yes.
Because I want to talk
very
about
briefly, because they're going to throw us off the
criminalizing BDS.
Yeah.
And at the same time, conflating criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism, which is what Trump did with this latest executive order, is one way of giving Israel a free pass. And this is a cheap trick, trying to link Palestinian struggle, the Palestinian struggle which has its own integrity, to all sorts of racism, while it's Israel and the US that exercise racist attitudes.
Is it time for a new generation of Palestinian leaders? Mahmoud Abbas's term, I believe, next month will be 11 years since his term was over.
Look, Mahmoud Abbas is elected. Mahmoud Abbas.
Yeah, 11 years ago his term finished.
You're right. Yeah. You don't mention that we had a coup d'etat by Hamas in 2007 and prevented elections. I'm not excusing ourselves, but all I'm telling you that we're not free of mistakes. No. But at least Palestinians don't have to see with the eyes of Mahmoud Abbas, listen through his ears, and speak through his tongues. We have 16 political parties. Everyone is free to do whatever they want. We're developing whatever we can. I'm not saying we.
Are there enough young leaders, do you think?
I think if you say I'm 60, Hanan is 70, we are 6% of the population. We have 94% of the population who are less than 60 years old. And I really believe that this is the future generation. They are our daughters and sons, very qualified. And yes, this will be the new leadership that's required for Palestinians. But the question is, what kind of system and institutions we have? We don't have, every country in the Arab world have institutions, human rights, so on and so on. We don't want names for institutions. We want institutions of states.
Okay.
And that's what we're trying to do as Palestinians.
You can in 1 second. We're out of time. We're officially over, but I'm going to sneak in one last question. I'm going to sneak in a last question if you both give very short answers before we get in trouble. Benjamin Netanyahu, is it over for Netanyahu, yes or no? And if what comes after Netanyahu, will it be better or worse for Palestinians? Hanan.
Yes, it's over for Netanyahu. I think he outlived his political usefulness to Israel and to the different political parties.
Coming after him, better or worse?
Not much better. And I think it's probably more of the same, because the discourse of extremism and racism and annexation and ideology is the prevailing discourse.
Saeb, very briefly.
I agree with Hanan. Netanyahu is over, but I don't poke my nose in Israel's affairs. Israelis have the right to choose their leadership. Any Israeli future government that wants to make peace with me must understand that my peace needs end occupation, State of Palestine 6-7, is Jerusalem its capital, solving all core issues, including refugees and accordance with international law, and we extend our hands to peace and negotiations based on international law and the two-state solution, and solving our problems through peaceful means.
And on that note, Saeb, Erakat, Hanan, Ashrawi, thank you both.